iPhone 14 Pro Max and iPhone 13 Pro Max. Wow, they look very similar, and that's true. They are. But there are some key differences too. And we're going to talk about those key differences in this video, and I'm just going to answer the question, if you have the iPhone 13 Pro Max, should you upgrade to the 14 Pro Max? Without further delay, let's dive right in. Starting off with design. Just take a look at them. Just take a look. Don't let me say anything for just like a good 2 seconds. There you go. They're almost the same. Just the key differences. So number one is when you look at the camera right here, the camera lenses are much larger on the iPhone 14 Pro versus the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And if I don't refer to them as Max in this video, just know I'm still talking about the Max model because I don't have the original Pros. But just look at those camera lenses. Much larger sensors on the 14 Pro Max compared to the 13 Pro Max. But otherwise, everything else, and just the flashes right there, just a little bit different on the 14 Pro Max versus the 13 Pro. But like the design itself is more or less the same. When we take a look at the right side, we're getting the power button. Just lower. It's just a little bit lower on the 14 Pro versus the 13 Pro. The sides are stainless steel and they get a lot of fingerprints. The back is a matte finish on both models. 5G antenna right there. When we take a look at the bottom, USB-C, we got our speakers. And then the other difference is when we take a look at the left, we're getting the same volume mute switch buttons, but we don't get a SIM card slot, at least in the US models, with the 14 Pro Max. It's eSIM now. And the conversion or the switch from eSIM, for me at least, was super easy. It took me like 2-3 minutes. Some have had trouble, but for me, it wasn't that hard. If you're outside of the US, you still will be getting a SIM card tray, so do keep that in mind. If you want to pick up a US model, you will not have that, and you're going to be needing the eSIM. Otherwise, like the back of the phone, like the way you hold it is pretty much more or less the same. Now, when we turn on the displays, first glance, like from a distance, they look fairly similar, but the main thing right here is if we pull down the notification bar right here, and my wallpaper is my latest wallpaper bag Illusions. Pretty nice actually. If you want to check it out, link in the description down below. But there's a notch right here on the 13 Pro Max, and the dynamic island is what Apple calls it. The pill-shaped camera cutout right here. And Apple does fill in the gaps between the Face ID, if you see from that angle, Face ID and the camera cutout with software, which is pretty cool. I like it. And with dynamic island, iOS is designed to animate around it. So things like your notifications and status indicators will pop up to surround the dynamic island. And that's a pretty neat idea. And this time Apple's embracing that cutout, the camera and Face ID cutout. Whereas, up until the 14 Pro Max, Apple was always trying to hide the notch as much as possible. And you can definitely tell with ads. So it does maintain the same 6.7-inch OLED display. Both of them still have that same display. But Apple, iPhone 14 Pro Max, I just lost my thoughts right there, but 14 Pro Max, always on display. 13 Pro Max does not have that. You can turn this off with the 14 Pro Max and the 14 Pro if you don't want to use it. And obviously iOS 16 on both devices, more customizable than ever, especially with the lock screen. Now they both have adaptive refresh rate technology. They're both 120 Hertz. However, the 13 Pro Max can only go from 120 Hertz down to 10 Hertz. But with the 14 Pro Max, you can go down from 120 to 1 Hertz, and Apple makes use of that 1 Hertz with the always on display. So there is that too. Display brightness, max brightness, I believe, I don't remember the 13 Pro Max, I believe somewhere around like 1200 nits, but the display brightness on the 14 Pro Max goes up to 2000 nits. In fact, let's like turn on the max brightness on both. Yeah, I can definitely tell, like in person at least, I can definitely tell that the 14 Pro Max is much brighter. And this is indoors. Imagine if I took these outdoors, it would definitely shine much better. So do know higher brightness levels is probably going to seep through battery life too, which we're going to be talking about in a little bit. But for the most part, design-wise, whether it comes to using the phone, holding in the hand, using it to watch videos like the display, which I believe is the most important part of a phone because it's the part of the phone we interact with the most, more or less the same. So there is that. That's really the main differences. Are they substantial improvements and differences? No, but they're pretty cool to have nonetheless. But let's move on to software and performance. So software and performance, they're both running iOS 16. Granted, the iPhone 13 Pro Max already came out with 1 year of software updates. iOS 16 originally debuted with iOS 15. The 14 Pro Max comes equipped with iOS 16. So expect probably 5 years because Apple's been really good with software updates. 5 years with both models, maybe even 6. Some iPhone models have had 6 years of software updates. And that's what I love about iPhones. They just last forever, at least when it comes to the software department. So the iPhone 14 Pro Max comes equipped with the Apple A16 Bionic chipset, which is upgraded version of the A15 chipset. They're still buttery smooth from day-to-day use. Like I said, in my day-to-day use of using both of these devices, I haven't seen any difference. I mean, it does say a lot, but it also doesn't say a lot because if you do Geekbench scores and whatnot, you're going to notice some improvements with the A16 Bionic chipset. The chipset itself, it packs a 6-core CPU with 2 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores, as well as a 5-core GPU and a 16-core neural engine. So there is that. And also the RAM. Apple doesn't usually specify RAM, but the iPhone 14 Pro Max comes with 6 gigs of LPDDR5, whereas the iPhone 13 Pro Max comes with 6 gigs of LPDDR4X. That's just something that I wanted to point out if if you're interested in knowing all that stuff. Storages are the same, 128 gigs to 1 terabyte. I was going to say 100 terabytes, 1 terabyte of storage. So do remember that as well. Now, Apple does claim that the A16 uses 20% less power than the A15 Bionic chipset. And it supports a GPU with 50% more memory bandwidth than the 13 Pro Max. Like I said, in my day-to-day use, I haven't noticed a difference. And also, the new chipset is also built on a 4 nanometer, whereas the A15 that's equipped in the 13 Pro Max, and also the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus is a 5 nanometer process. So there is that. But overall, like my day-to-day usage, performance on these two, I have not noticed any difference. The refresh rate has been amazing. Watching YouTube videos has been amazing. The camera cutouts with the notch or the pill shape doesn't bother me at all. So no difference for me in here. Okay, so now let's talk about cameras. This is the biggest upgrade from the 13 Pro Max to the 14 Pro Max. Now has a 48 megapixel camera. We finally got the megapixel camera upgrade. The last one was in 2015 when Apple debuted the iPhone 6s. That's 7 years of using 12 megapixels, whereas competitors are using 50 megapixels, 100 megapixels. We finally have a 48 megapixel camera on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. And just to let you know right off the bat, there is no 8K recording. So there is that. Ending the years of 12 megapixels though, so I'm pretty happy for that. So this new sensor is going to help the 14 Pro Max deliver better photos, and Apple does claim its new photonic engine will further improve the quality of low light photos captured with the 14 Pro Max. Now, if you do want to shoot 48 megapixels, you do have to shoot in RAW. So there is that. When you do pick up the iPhone 14 Pro and you just turn the camera on for the first time, it's going to be shooting in 12 megapixels. Do remember that? You have to change it from your settings. So when you go down to camera right here, you are going to have to change it. So if you go to formats, Apple ProRAW and ProRAW resolution, you can change it from 12 megapixels to 48 megapixels. Mine's set at 48. So there is that. One thing I would recommend is if you're not going to be editing a lot of your photos, because Pro RAW does take up more storage than you want it to, then I would just say keep shooting photos at 12 megapixels. But for the most part, photos have been great on both devices. I'll be putting up some sample photos right on screen. You be the judge. For me, camera, like taking photos wasn't like the main reason why I wanted to check out the iPhone 14 Pro Max and use it as my main device. But for me, it was video. As you know, for the past year, ever since I had the 13 Pro Max, it's been my main A-roll. Right now, I'm obviously not using it for A-roll or my top down because I have to make this comparison, but it's been really reliable. I know that if I go somewhere, I can rely on my 13 Pro Max to take video, high quality videos for the channel. And also thank you guys, by the way, for supporting the channel. But this is proof that you too can start making videos, producing content with just your iPhone. But let's talk about the differences and the upgrades. 14 Pro Max comes equipped with this new 40 megapixel camera and cinematic mode upgrades too. So cinematic mode on the 14 Pro Max comes in at 4K, 24 frames per second and 30 frames per second. If you remember before when it was unveiled last year with the 13 Pro Max, cinematic mode was capped at 1080p at 30 frames per second. I mean, did 30 frames per second cinematic mode? What? Cinema film is captured at 24 frames per second. So that right there in of itself is just like, okay. So I'm really happy that Apple went ahead. They added this record cinematic 4K at 24 frames per second. There is new action mode. So if you're, using this to take videos of running or doing sports and whatnot, it's definitely going to help with stabilization much better. Personally, you see me, I'm talking down a top shot, so I'm not really going to be having too many action shots from here, but there is that upgrade, and that's really it. The upgrades for the camera, especially videos for me, has just been reliable, and I'm going to continue to be using iPhones, and hopefully my end goal is to be shooting all of my different angles on the channel with at least an iPhone 13 Pro Max, but I would definitely love to have the latest iPhone to be shooting all angles, so the quality is the same from all angles. Like one angle right now is like an iPhone SE, another angle is an iPhone 12 mini, and then the iPhone 13 Pro or the 14 Pro. So hopefully that will happen, but this just goes to show that you can start making content. I know some people who record iPhone videos with their iPhones, or just videos in general with their iPhones, and they have a large subscriber count. So that does mean a lot. You don't need to go and buy the latest like Sony A7 Mark IV, whatever it is. These are more than enough. And the upgrades for me have been superb. Now, battery life. Okay, so using both of these devices, I can definitely tell that always on display and the brightness has taken a hit with the 14 Pro Max. It does have a more battery efficient processor, okay, but it has always on display. I'm still going to be testing it more extensively and then give you my final verdict and my full review. But for the most part, while it has, performed really well, the battery life, it just hasn't been on par with the 14 Pro Max. Like, it will last you a whole day, don't get me wrong, but it's just like, you've set your expectations when you use the 13 Pro Max. You've set your expectations. So you were expecting, at least I was expecting that with the 14 Pro Max, but then when I started using it, I realized always on display, I realized the high brightness does take a hit on the phone. So there is that. Other than that, if you want to get better battery life on the 14 Pro Max, make sure you turn off the always on display and just make sure you don't try to use it with the highest possible brightness levels it has, because that is going to sip through battery life. But they're still really good. Like, I've had my expectations set high. I was a little bummed out because I've been getting a little bit worse. Not like I'm not exaggerating, like, oh, it's so much worse, don't get it because of the battery life. No, it still performs exceptionally well. I just set my expectations way too high because of the performance that I had with the 13 Pro Max. And also, I've used this phone for 1 year. I still have 100% battery right here. Even check it out. Let's go right here. 100% battery health. Oops, right here. There we go. Battery health, 100%. See right there? There we go. Yeah, so I really care about battery life. For me, battery is an important aspect. Like, I don't want to charge my phone, and I wouldn't charge my phone all day. There are days where I go into my second day of not charging the iPhone 13 Pro Max. Again, I'm going to test this extensively and let you guys know in my full review of the 14 Pro Max and see if battery still holds on par with the 13 Pro Max. Okay, so let's talk about the pricing. They were priced the same when they first launched. So $10.99 for 128 gigs and so on and so forth. It goes up to 1 terabyte. This was 128 gigs, but I realized quickly that since I'm using it as my main camera to have these top-down videos, I would need more storage, which is why I went ahead and picked up 256 gigs. And hopefully the year after, I will be going for a higher end model, at least 512 gigs. And also because I'm going to be testing out shooting raw photos, which does take up more storage as well. But yeah, you're not going to be able to find this from Apple's website brand new. They might be selling it refurbished later on, or you can find it like used on secondhand markets. So there is that. This is the only Pro Max model you can pick up from Apple's official website, or if your carriers have like in stock models of the 13 Pro Max and they're trying to get rid of, then you probably can do that as well. Now they do come with a little bit different colors. So for the most part, the gold and the silver, they're both present on the 14 and 13 Pro Max models. Just like the hue of it is just a little bit different. And the main new color with the 14 Pro Max, I didn't pick it up, I went with the gold, is deep purple. This is the color of last year's Sierra Blue, which I really do like. And the black this year is different. 14 Pro Max is much darker with space black compared to the graphite found on the 13 Pro Max. But that's really it for pricing. I think they're priced pretty well. I kind of wish Apple got rid of the 128 gigs and made 256 gigs the base model and still priced at $10.99. That would have been perfect for many consumers because file sizes are continuing to grow. So I do think we need more storage, and that doesn't go just for Apple, but for other companies out there. Make 256 gigs your base storage. 128 gigs is slowly starting to kind of fall off. And last year I used to say it was enough for me, but this year it's not going to be enough for me anymore. So I'm glad I bought at least 256 gigs on my model. But yeah, pricing. It's an iPhone Pro Max. I mean, you can't really expect anything too different. There were rumors of the 14 Pro Max being more expensive, but I'm glad that rumor turned out to be false. Okay, so my final thoughts, and I want to answer the question now. If you have the iPhone 13 Pro Max, should you pick up the iPhone 14 Pro Max? The answer is no. The answer is straight up no. If you care about those differences, if you want to shoot ProRes of 48 megapixels, then you go with the iPhone 14 Pro. If you really do care about that dynamic island, you go with the Pro. If you do want eSIM, you go with the Pro. If you care about that better, brightness level, you go with the 14 Pro. But other than that, you don't need to go with the 14 Pro. If you have the 13 Pro, more than capable device. It's not a substantial upgrade. There's some good upgrades, but it's not upgrades that are worthy for you. However, if you're getting a really good deal, like Apple's trade-in 720, even if you had the 1 terabyte model of the iPhone 13 Pro Max, it would still be capped at $720 for a trade-in. If you have like a really good carrier deal and you're getting the new model for like maybe $100, then yeah, go for it. If you have that sweet deal, go for it. But otherwise, if you're just, getting the iPhone 14 Pro just because, then no. Like I was able to sell my 13 Pro Max and just put a couple hundred more to get the 14 Pro Max. And for me, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a really good device. But if I could have just, went ahead, bought it for the channel, made these videos, and then returned it and continued to use the iPhone 13 Pro Max. But like I said, I don't think you should go pick it up, especially have the 13 Pro Max. If you have something older, like the iPhone 11 Pro Max, or older than that, like the XS Max, for example, it's gonna be a huge upgrade. You're gonna really enjoy it. But even with the 12 Pro, you notice I didn't say 12 Pro. Even with the 12 Pro though, I don't think it's worthy of an upgrade. Yeah, you're gonna get the 120 hertz, which I think makes a huge difference once you start using it on an iPhone. But 13 Pro Max especially, it's not worth the upgrade. But that's really been it from me in this video. I hope you guys did enjoy, and be sure to check out my latest wallpaper pack. It's called Illusions. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, and I'll be leaving a link of my other wallpapers in the description down below too if you want to check those out. But that's been it for me. I hoop you guys did enjoy. If you did, be sure to superman that like button, comment down below, and best of all, share this video because it really does help out the channel a lot and will help push my content out to more people. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next episode.